And it is finally here, the BT battle-tested TM7 show. A lot of requests on this show. A lot of requests. So, you know, I got one of these. I've been testing it for the past couple weeks. Pretty excited about this review. So let's go ahead and take the TM7 out of the box and let's start talking about the BT TM7. BT, just for a lot of people, I know a lot of people think it means Ben Titman. Well, per the box, it says battle tested, okay? So it's right there on the box, battle tested. I know it's going to be a hot one when this video goes up. Packaging is nice. Manual is, you know, nice, colored, glossy manual. Good stuff. You're going to definitely need that. Something else I was real excited about when I saw this in the box was it has a really nice parts kit. It's got some O-rings, extra screws, which you probably need, extra detents, which always come in handy, springs for the detents, a battery, some lube and O-rings, and it's also got a stock plug for those that don't like the stock, and we're going to get into that here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and take the gun out, and let's talk about it. Here we go. Now, you know, if this is, you know, obviously if you're brand new to paintball, the TM7 is based on the Empire Mini. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what do you know about the Mini? Well, I actually own three Minis right now. You know, here's one of them. This is my black Mini. This is what this gun is based on, okay? The Empire Mini. Now, basically what they did was they took the Mini and dressed it up for people that were looking for a more milsim type paintball gun, okay? You know, people that are wanting mini technology or wanting a gun that's lightweight yet looks like, you know, a military replica firearm. And the first thing you'll notice when you pick this marker up is it looks like, a lot of people say it looks like an MP5. It's actually, I believe it's the newer version of the MP5, which is the MP7, is what this gun is modeled after. Comes with a short barrel. I believe this is a 10-inch barrel. It's auto cocker threaded. So, you know, about 90% of the guns that are on the market right now are auto cocker threaded. This is one of them. And what you'll notice here is the feed neck. And what you have to do here is you basically have to take the feed neck, and it's got a little pull pin here. Go ahead and push it on. Okay, and then what you do is slide the feed neck back over the hole. So this is kind of a unboxing slash review at the same time. So you keep pulling it until it lines up with the hole. You know, you stick your finger down into the breech, and there you go. Some of the cool things and some of the features of the TM7, set that right there. Some of the features on the TM7, when you first see it out of the box, one, it has an adjustable foregrip, okay? You can put it down, you can put it up, you can also slide it forward or slide it back, which some people might like. Another thing about the gun is it has a collapsible stock. It's kind of cool. What they did was the stock actually goes inside of the gun. Now, I'll talk about this here in a little bit, but the gun definitely has that MP5 / MP7 feel about it. Something else too that's obviously very popular with the scenario paintball players is it has the adjustable switch. So, you know, you can start off in safe mode. Then what you can do is you can click it down into semi-auto. So if you're just looking to plink, then you can get into your burst mode, and then you can get into your full auto. So typically if I'm kind of in a light firefight, I like to keep the gun in semi-auto. That way I'm not wasting tons and tons of paint. You know, like if I'm engaging somebody but they're really far away, you know, I'll keep it in semi-auto and just kind of plink at them, plink, plink, plink. You know, if I'm on point, is like what I say, you guys see me in the woods where I'm pushing up really hard, usually I'll have the gun in burst. That way if I come across a sniper or somebody with a ghillie suit, I make sure I can get enough paint on him for him to call himself out. And if I'm completely on my own, holding down a fort, I'll put the gun in full auto. So that was basically what I use the modes for. You know, I wouldn't put the gun in full auto if I'm just kind of engaging somebody from really far away because I'm going to waste tons of paint. But having that available, that selector switch is pretty nice. A couple things about the gun that I didn't particularly like The plastic trigger that's on this gun, because it's based on the Mini, I believe the Mini uses, it's like a magnet proximity switch, or I think it's either a Hall or a Reedy switch. I'm not exactly which one it is. It's a magnet switch. It's not a micro switch. So what happens is the trigger, if you can imagine, here's the top of the trigger and there's a magnet attached to it. There's a sensor there, and once the magnet gets far enough away from that sensor, the gun fires. That's how the trigger works. So the thing with the trigger that I didn't particularly like is it feels kind of spongy. It's not an easy trigger to walk, and it just, you know, when you're shooting it, you don't really mind it. You know, you don't really notice it too much, but there really is not a lot there. It feels gritty. You know, side-to-side play, I mean, there's really not much side-to-side play, but the trigger itself just has a very spongy feel to it, which I'm not a particular fan of. I kind of like that crisp micro switch feel, but we're dealing with a Mini, and Minis have a different trigger system than almost any of the other guns that are on the market. Also, the selector switch was very easy to bump when I was out there. So as I was out there and I was playing, if I wasn't careful and I was running and I go to switch hands, I did have a tendency to knock the selector switch either from, you know, 3-shot into semi, or semi into safe, or safe down into 3-shot. The selector switch, it's a very light engage, or, like, you know, when it clicks into place, it's a very light click, and it's very easy to accidentally move it if you're not careful. Not that big of a deal, just a couple things that I picked at. Also, the feed neck that's on here, because they were going for a lightweight gun, the feed neck that's on here is also made of that plastic, or the composite material. And when I had my Pinocchio on here, and Pinocchio is a pretty light loader, I did notice as I was running through the woods, watching it kind of sway and move a little bit. Now, I wasn't afraid of it breaking, but it was something that as I was running through the woods, I did notice it kind of moving a little bit on top there. Now, it never came loose or anything like that, but just a couple of things that I noticed when I was out there playing with it. The barrel on it works just fine. One of the problems that I have with such a short barrel is that when I have especially when I'm running the remote line and I'm trying to look down the sight, all of the rails that are on here and stuff like that, I can't really see the barrel. So as you shoot, when you really lean over and look at down the sights, as you shoot, you're just going to see the ball come out. So, you know, with the barrel being down here and your eye being down up here, you're really going to just catch the top of the ball before it comes back down again. So I'll talk about that here in a little bit also. But all in all, the gun performed pretty well when I was out there on the field. I tried it in a ton of different ways. I tried it with the stock, which actually looks really cool when you're playing with the gun at the house and stuff like that. But when you're out there, it's not the most comfortable thing, because you literally have to take your head and lay it down at a 90-degree almost, almost completely horizontal in order to look down the sights. And with a mask, it just doesn't work trying to run down the field with your head cocked that far over. So, you know, I hate to say it, even with the remote line, the stock really I didn't find that useful when I was out there. It was more uncomfortable than anything else. I did like it if I was kind of I had it down like this, but if you're the type of person that likes to look down the sights, this stock doesn't work very well. It does a good job of shouldering it against your, putting it against your shoulder, but in terms of actually using it to aim, it doesn't work that well. I found when I was out there using the gun that I typically liked it better with the tank screwed directly into the ASA. So what I did was, when I take the gun apart, I'm going to show you. This is how I preferred to have it. You know, with the tank screwed into the ASA, I actually had the stock removed, which it has a cap that you can put in there. I was about to say butt plug, but it actually has a cap that you can put in there that will get rid of the stock and flush the back of it up. For me, when I was out there playing, this felt a lot more comfortable with the tank screwed into the ASA. And like I've told you guys many times, with minis, because it is a direct mount ASA and there is no on-off knob, get yourself a bottle of Tri-Flow from macrolineguy.com, put a drop in there. It makes screwing your tank in and out a lot easier. So, talk about a couple of the different configurations that I used when I was out there playing. The barrel I felt was a little too short, so what I did was to maintain the weight. And before I unscrew the barrel, let's go ahead and weigh the gun. Let me make sure I've got a battery in here. Yep, I've got a battery in here. So, there's the battery. So let's go ahead and put it back in here. And just so you know how the battery is changed on it, and we're going to go ahead and zoom in here. Okay, on the underside of the marker here, you're going to see a slide, and what you do is you slide that open, the battery door open, and out falls the battery. It's got a nice little engagement. You don't have to worry about the battery coming out when you're out on the field. It's not going to happen, but that's how you take the battery out. And coincidentally, and we're going to have to zoom in even more, inside of here is where you adjust your velocity. What you do is you get yourself an Allen key, and you're going to look up inside into the gun, and you're going to see the holes there. You stick your Allen key and you basically pivot it. It's kind of like a Bob Long Mark LPR. You don't use the Allen key to twist it. You use it to spin the dial that's inside there. So when we take the gun apart, you'll see that. A couple of the different configurations that I used with this gun when I was out there on the field. And let's go ahead and weigh it. Let's go ahead and turn this on. Okay, just a hair under 3 pounds. 2 pounds, 15.8 ounces. So let's get that there so everybody can see it. 2 pounds, 15.8 ounces for the BT TM7. So not that heavy of a gun. Not an extremely light gun, but keep in mind we're talking about milsim, and typically with milsim, the guns are a little bit on the heavier side. A couple different configurations that I used the gun in. One of them was the Stiffi metal-free barrel, which I really liked because it gave me the longer barrel, which typically makes the gun a little bit more quiet, but the Stiffi barrels tend to be very quiet. So make sure that doesn't roll off the table. There we go. So that is with the Stiffi metal free. This is a 14-inch 691 metal free barrel. I really liked this barrel on the front of the gun. Makes the gun very light, and nice and quiet, and it worked great. Another barrel that I used on the front of the gun, depending on the field layout, was an Apex barrel, which is also made by BT, and I used the Lapco Big Shot. It's the 12-inch barrel with the Apex tip. So screw that in, and that was the other configuration that I used. So it's a 12-inch Lapco barrel, 690 Big Shot, with the Apex barrel attachment. I believe I bought this from Lapco for, I think it was $90 on their website. This was an awesome barrel. I had a really good time with this. The Apex is probably one of the best barrels for woods ball I've ever seen. Smokes the flat line, blows the flat line out of the water. Just because you can turn it on, you can turn it off, you can adjust it. If you have a tendency to tilt your gun in, you can move the dialer a little bit. The Apex barrel, if you play woods ball, I'm telling you this right now, even if you shoot a tipman, get the Apex barrel. Trust me, right now they're a steal. You can get them on eBay. You can get an A&S gear for like 40 bucks. It's an absolute steal, and it does everything the Flatline does, but more. I definitely highly recommend the Apex barrel. On the big, wide open fields, I won't go into the woods without this thing. This is an awesome barrel for this gun. So that were some of the different configurations that I had with this gun, and I ran it remote line, and I ran it straight bottle, and personally for me playing paintball, I liked the bottle on the gun a little bit better. So let's go ahead and we're going to move the camera, get a little bit closer. We're going to take the gun apart, so I'll show you how to take the gun apart. We're going to show some on the field footage of me playing with it, just having a good time, and then we'll come back. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take apart the TM7, and you're going to see I have the plug here in my hand that is going to basically, when I take the gun apart and I put it back together, I'm going to remove the stock, which as you can see here, it's an adjustable stock. Goes out quite a bit for people with longer arms. But what I'm going to do is when I reassemble the gun, I'm going to put in the plug and take out the stock. So let's go ahead and put this back together. All right, first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and remove the barrel. Now this is a good time if you're removing the barrel to check to make sure there is no air pressure in the gun. I can see that the gauge is reading 0. So there is no air pressure in the gun. And out comes the barrel. Now what we'll do is let's go ahead and remove the feed neck. What you do is you push the button here, slide the feed neck. There's a groove cut into the Weaver rail here. And you just basically take the feed neck, you push the button here, and you slide it forward and out. So we'll set that aside. Now what we'll do is we'll remove the rear sight rail. And something I didn't mention either, but on the, if you look here, you'll see a sight here, and there's actually a V sight here in the front and a little pin here, a little pin here in the front and a V cut sight here in the back for people that like sights on their guns. So let's loosen up the rear sight rail and set that aside. And now what we will do is let's go ahead and remove the foregrip. Now we're going to have to bounce around and use a couple different Allen keys here. Now this screw has to come completely out in order to remove the foregrip. Almost got it. There we go. Screw comes out. We just carefully push this off. Off comes the foregrip. Screw that down a little bit. And now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the selector arm. Now they claim this isn't necessary to take the gun apart. I kind of like just getting it out of the way. So it's got a flathead screw. Off comes the selector arm. And the next thing we're going to need to do is remove the grips. Now everything that I can see right here, I'm pretty sure that stock mini grips will work on this gun. So if you don't like the black grips, you want to get, you know, some cool aftermarket grips. You know, Virtue makes some cool ones, and you know, like Hybrid. There's a bunch of different companies that are out there that make mini grips. You can go ahead and do that. Now, when you're taking this apart, you're going to notice that there are extra long screws at the bottom and normal size screws at the top. It's important that you get that correct, that the extra long screws go at the bottom of the grip. So let's go ahead and remove the grip. The reason why that is the bottom screws on the grip actually help hold the ASA in place. So let's go ahead and flip this back over again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our Allen key, and there's 7 screws that hold this thing together. So I just got number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6. If you ever taken apart a Tipman, it's kind of like that. You know, you got to take all, you know, you got to loosen up all the screws on one side and remove the whole clamshell. Now what you have to do is remove these 2 small panhead screws that are holding, that are down there near the ASA. So let's go ahead and get those out of the way. 2 panhead screws. Flip this back over again. And let's go ahead and remove the battery while we're at it. And now we should be able to carefully start prying the 2 halves apart. I just kind of take the, you know, take this little sight here and just start wiggling them back and forth. You may have to unscrew a couple of these screws a little bit more. Okay, looks like that was the one that was hanging up. There we go. Okay, now the left side pops completely off. All there is that's on the left side are just a couple of screws. The 7 screws are still in place. Let's go ahead and set that aside. Now, we are now down into the heart of the gun. And the first thing you probably want to do here is let's go ahead and remove the trigger. Now the trigger just slides right out. You can see the trigger, you can see the magnet up on top. Now this is what they call the box spring. This spring actually serves 2 purposes. There's a little box spring that's inside here. Not only does it give the repelling force to push the trigger back with the bottom tab right here, it also indexes for the selector switch. So let's go ahead and remove the selector switch, or the selector switch rod. Set that aside. Okay, and now from here what we can do is let's go ahead and unplug the battery harness. So we got that out of there. Then what we can also start to do now is let's go ahead and remove the stock. Now you want to look at the stock and see how it's positioned. It's the spring attachment here, the locking mechanism, basically is held in place down there at the very bottom. You want to make sure that it lines up perfectly flush with the bottom here. Now you can pull this piece out, I'm not going to, but that's how you want that to be. You're going to see a little plastic piece, the long tab faces towards the back. We'll set that there. It's basically a guide rail so that the stock goes back and forth on both sides without rubbing the body. So the stock is set aside. Now what we'll do is let's go ahead and basically remove the internals. Now the reason why you want to disconnect the battery is because you can't get this part out, but the battery harness, or the wire harness and the wire tray, it's like a wire guide, you can take out. So we don't need this piece anymore. We can set that aside. Now basically what we're looking at here is pretty much a Mini. It's got the regulator up on top, and basically the internals are going to be just like a Mini. So let's go ahead and unscrew screw right here, and you got to be kind of careful because there is spring tension, so this may shoot out. There it goes. Out comes the poppet. Out comes the bolt and the spring. Okay. Now there really is not really, you don't really need to go any further than this. What you can do from here is now take your swab and go right up through your breech. You know, if you happen to have broken paint inside here, or this is a mess inside here, or you know, you need to re-lube it and clean it. This is as far as you need to go with this part of the gun. Now let's say for instance that you're having some poppet issues and you want to take out your poppet and clean out the inside, make sure everything's okay. Here's what you want to do. First thing you want to do is you want to kind of take an Allen key and get a good gauge for how far this is screwed in. Okay, so I know that this Allen key is pretty close to, you know, from the edge here to the bottom of the hole. So that's about, you know, this way I know when I go to the chronograph I'm going to be relatively close to where I was when I first started. Now you're going to start to unscrew it. This is where, when I told you that you look up on the underside, this is actually how you adjust the velocity. You loosen this to raise the velocity, you tighten it to decrease the velocity. So let's go ahead and remove the poppet. Okay, out comes the back cap. Now what you do is you take your Allen key and carefully press down from the front. Out comes the poppet. You got to be really careful that you do not lose the spring that's inside there. And we can go ahead and remove the spring. Now the spring is directional. It's a little bigger on one side than it is on the other. And so you just need to make sure when you take this apart that you put the spring back together in the correct place. If it doesn't click into place with a little bit of, you know, with a little bit of resistance, you need to flip the spring around. So flip it around that way and you hear it click into place. There it goes. So now that we have it apart, basically you just want to take your favorite lubricant. You know, in this case I'm just going to use a little Hater Marmalade. A little bit of this goes a long way. You know, lube the bolt up, lube up the O-rings. Put the spring back in place. Let's go ahead and lube up the piston. Slide that down. Now we can take the back cap. There we go. Now remember what I told you? We need to make sure we know exactly how far, or pretty close to how far to screw this down. Let's take a look at my Allen key, which is what I was using as my gauge. It looks like about right. I could probably back it out a little bit more. That looks about right. So I should know when I take this over to the chronograph, I should be shooting pretty close to where I was before. It may not be exact, but that's why after you take your gun apart, you always take it to the chronograph. Let's go ahead and slide the bolt back on here. Now when you put the bolt back in, there's a pin here and there's a hole on this bolt guide, and you need to line the pin up with the bolt guide. Slide it all the way down. Take your screw, slide it up through the bottom. And you need to make sure that the bolt guide is all the way in. There it goes. Once the bolt guide is all the way in, the screw will go all the way in. There we go. Alright, so we have just basically taken apart, cleaned our breech. If you need to take out your detents, you can do it here. You don't have, if you're not having problems with your detents, if you put your finger in there and you feel your detents sliding back and forth, they're not sticking or anything, you don't have to take your detents out. I recommend not taking them out. They don't need servicing. Alright, let's get the right side of the body back here in front of us. And I'd probably start with the wire guide. Now the wire guide does have an indexing hole down at the bottom to make sure that you put it in there properly. There we go. Reconnect the battery harness. And you want to make sure that all of the wires are in their proper grooves. You're going to see a hole here or a groove here for the battery. Now like I told you, if you don't want to install the stock, you can put the cap here, or some people like to call the butt plug. There's the back cap, and you can see here, I'll hold this up to the camera, there's the back cap. Okay, so it's nice and flush, there's no stock here or anything like that. Probably for the purpose of the video, I'll go ahead and reinstall the stock, but you have that option if you don't want the stock there. Very easy to remove. Let's go ahead and remove the back cap, and we will slide. You just got to kind of pick this up. There it goes. Put it down into its groove. The spring tension switch, you just set that down into the groove on the body. Now also, down here at the bottom, there's two brass screws or nuts that you need to put down back into the holes here. These are what are going to hold the bottom of the grip frame back on, hold your ASA in place. Now what we'll do is we'll make sure that our box spring is in place. Let's go ahead now on the trigger selector switch. At the bottom, you're going to see the grooves. There's 4 notches in it, and you need to put the grooves facing down towards the box spring. There it goes. Okay. Once that's in place, we can go ahead and reinstall the trigger. There we go. Okay, we are now in the home stretch of taking this gun apart. Now from here, let's go ahead and line up the two halves. Okay. Now probably the first place that I would start putting it together, let's start with the two flathead screws that went down at the bottom here. So let's go ahead and put in the flathead screws. I'm just going to put one in place for right now. Now what we'll do is we'll start screwing down all of the 7 screws that hold the body clamshell together. And kind of like lug nuts on your car, you don't want to just tighten one down super tight and then go tight down the other 7. Get them all finger tight first. and then go back and snug them all down. You don't have to make them, the first one you tighten down super tight. Sometimes I can make it kind of hard to get the other ones in. There we go. There we go. Here's the 7th one. Now let's go back to the first one. Snug it down, snug it down, snug it down. There we go. There we go. Okay, now here we go. We're going to install the selector switch. Now it is keyed, so when you put this in there, you got to make sure that you line it up perfectly. You'll notice if it's nice and flush and you see it ratcheting, hitting the force selector from safe, semi-auto, burst, and full auto, click, 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 all the way down, you know you put that in there properly. Let's go ahead and flip the gun over and let's install the 2nd flathead screw that holds the reg in place. There we go. A lot of people are going to say, that's really complicated, that's really hard. But, you got to understand with Milsim, you just got to, take a little bit of time to read the manual and practice, because in order to get a Milsim gun, they have to take a normal paintball gun and dress it up to make it Milsim. And basically, you're undressing the gun to get down to the bare parts of the normal paintball gun in order to service it and repair it. So if you want Milsim, you just have to learn to deal with putting the gun together and taking it apart. And actually, one of the things I did here was I forgot to put in the battery door, which is a very easy mistake to correct. Now the battery door is directional, so you need to make sure that you'll see a little ramp here at the bottom of it. The little ramp is facing towards the back. Now you just have to separate this just enough. There we go. Separate it just enough to get the battery door in there, and now you can lock down the 3 screws. Pretty common mistake. You don't have to take them all back out again. Just unscrew the back 3 screws, and the plastic, the plastic body is going to give just enough for you to install the battery door. There we go. Now let's install the other 2 screws of the grip. Now, like I said, the short screw goes on the top. The long screw goes at the bottom. Okay, short screw at the top, long screw at the bottom. There we go. Let's go ahead and install the foregrip. Now when you install the foregrip, you do need to pull the screw out because the screw helps hold it in place. There we go. Now what we'll do is let's go ahead and install the rear sight. And the rear sight just slides on. So we'll just go a couple notches in. There we go. So the rear sight is on. Let's go ahead and install reinstall the clamp and feed neck. So there's a button here that pushes that helps you slide it down the frame. So let's go ahead and press the button, slide it down the frame until we get to the hole. And when it clicks into place, you can put your finger down there and you'll notice that it is lined up with the breech perfectly. And we are in the home stretch. Now all we got to do is take our barrel, tighten our barrel down, put in our battery. Now you will notice that it is indexed. You'll see negative is on the left. Let's put negative on the left, put it down, close it, and you'll see, that's on there. So you don't have to worry about this battery door coming open when you're out there. Press the power button, you'll see the gun turns on. You got to hold it till it turns red. There we go. So, turns red. And it looks like everything is working perfectly. So let's go ahead and take it out to the field and test it out.
Ready?
Oh, that was close. My bad. Ooh, you get me?
Yep.
All right, so there was some on the field action with you, showing you some third-person view and some barrel cam footage. You know, shooting the TM7, having a good time. I know a lot of people are going to ask it, so I'm going to kind of go off the path really quick and talk about what I was using. NinjaPaintball.com has got the remote coils. One of the coolest things that they have, and you'll see like the extra hosing that I have, they have this thing called in-flight refueling, and if you use a vest and you use the TM7 with the remote coil, I highly recommend you get one of these in-flight refuelings from Ninja Paintball. What it is on your pack. It goes into your fill nipple like this, and you just basically take this hose, and I just kind of stuck it down into my belt. Now when you go up to the fill station to fill it up, you fill your tank up through this hose. It works awesome. It's better than trying to yank your thing off or taking off your vest or having to yank your tank out. The vest that I was using is a vest here from Flurry Industries. Making a great little vest. I love this vest. They sent me a couple of them for me to demo. So far, so good. Definitely a little bit on the warmer side, just like any vest is. But the vest that I was using is from FlurryIndustries.com. So that's about it for the TM7. You know, some things I like about it, some things I don't like about it. One thing that is really cool about the gun is that it does have the ability to change itself from a, you know, almost like what you want to call a true milsim with the stock, and you have the ability to remove the stock and put the tank in through the bottom, which is the setup that I personally prefer, and it's the setup that I would recommend. But it's a cool gun. I do like the MP style look of it. It is pretty tough on paint, so I would not recommend shooting any sort of brittle tournament style ultra evil paint through this gun. This gun likes thicker shell paint, just like most minis do. It definitely likes a thicker shell paint, but this is a good gun. It's lightweight, easy to shoot. The selector switch works pretty well as long as you're careful and you don't bump it. Being able to move the battery and remove the battery really quickly is also really nice. You know, these guns right now are retailing for $399. Getting harder and harder to find, so you know, hopefully this helps you make your decision on the TM7. You know, shoot me an email if you have any questions, or go into the TechPB forums and post up in the Ben Tippmann section. I'll be checking in there for any comments. So hopefully this helps.